Good morning, everyone. Now, to continue with today's lecture, I will be summarizing the few slides. First of all, the genital discharge. It is nothing but a fluid produced by the glands in the male or female genital tract, which is being drained from the opening of the vaginal urethra, which is being drained from the opening of the vagina or urethra. This discharge can either be physiological or pathological with different etiologies. When pathological, it may either be infectious or non-infectious. The etiology of physiological discharge in females can either be age dependent or there might be an excessive secretion due to pregnancy or sexual arousal. The pathological discharge in cases of males can either be infectious or non-infectious. When acquired venereally, it presents with urethritis, and in cases of non-venereal infection, it can either present as balanitis, balanoposthitis, or prostatitis. In cases of non-infectious causes of pathological discharge, which includes foreign body impaction, neoplasm, inflammatory dermatosis, spermatoria, or prostaturia. Now, coming on to the pathological discharge present in female, when infectious in etiology, they can either present as vaginitis, urethritis, or cervicitis. And in cases of non-infectious pathological discharge, the causes include forgotten tampons of foreign body, certain chemicals, malignancies, post-radiation procedures, and inflammatory dermatosis. The discharge in cases of both males and females can be of different types, and depending on to the site of involvement, a discharge can either be a vaginal discharge, a cervical discharge, or urethral discharge, depending what is the causative organism. We will be discussing the male counterparts of same infection simultaneously as the infection essentially remains the same. When a patient presents to you with complaints of thin, white, or grayish vaginal discharge, which has a strong fishy odor, especially after the intercourse, the patient may also present with complaints of occasional pain or itching. Otherwise, the patient is asymptomatic. In such case scenarios, we are dealing with bacterial vaginosis. There are various risk factors that are being involved in cases of bacterial vaginosis, which includes recent antibiotic use, decreased estrogen production, IUDs, dowsing, increased sexual activity with different sexual partners. There are two models which essentially explains the pathogenesis of bacterial vaginosis. That is being lactobacillus depletion model, and the other one is the primary pathogen model. These models, they explain two factors. The first one is decrease or displacement of lactobacilli, which is important to maintain the homeostatic milieu of vaginal epithelium. And the other factor is the overgrowth of anaerobic facultative bacteria. When these occur, it leads to development of bacterial vaginosis. A patient with bacterial vaginosis presents with complaints of vaginal odor, mild to moderate increased vaginal discharge, vulvar irritation, or dysuria or dyspareunia, though these presentations are rare. On examination, a patient will have gray, thin, and homogeneous vaginal discharge, which is adhered to the vaginal mucosa. The labia, introitus, cervix will be normal. A diagnosis of bacterial vaginosis is made with AMSIS criteria, which has a sensitivity of 86% and specificity of about 98%. This criteria has 4 points, out of which 3 has to be there. These 4 points are demonstration of clue cells, pH should be greater than 4.5, there should be a homogeneous thin and gray discharge, and whiff test positivity. When we say clue cells, these clue cells are vaginal epithelial cells that have bacteria adherent to their surfaces. The edges of these squamous epithelial cells, which normally have a sharply defined cell borders, become studded with bacteria. These epithelial cells, they appear to be peppered with cocobacilli. When we say whiff test positivity, we mean that a test is being performed by placing a drop of 10% potassium hydroxide on a speculum after the vaginal examination, or mixing the vaginal fluid with a drop of potassium hydroxide on a slide. Potassium hydroxide, by virtue of its alkaline properties, it causes release of volatile amines from vaginal fluid. These amines are basically produced by anaerobic bacterial metabolism. Hence, whenever we say that there is whiff test positivity, that means on placing 10% KOH, we can appreciate a fishy odor. And this whiff test positivity is seen in about 70% of bacterial vaginosis patients. Treatment of genital infection is basically recommended by three bodies: CDC, WHO, and NACO. We, in our routine clinical practices, we practice treatment given by CDC. CDC for bacterial vaginosis recommends a dose of metronidazole 500 milligram orally twice a day, and WHO recommends the same treatment of metronidazole with a dose of 400 milligram or 500 milligram orally twice a day for 7 days. In cases of bacterial vaginosis, partner's treatment is not recommended. This is the next case scenario in which a patient presents with abnormal, purulent, frothy discharge, which may or might be which is occasionally bloody, and patient has complaints of vaginal pruritus. When such case scenarios occur, we think of a probable diagnosis of trichomoniasis. Trichomoniasis is caused by a motile parasitic protozoan Trichomonas vaginalis, and nearly half of the infected females and approximately all the infected males in cases of trichomoniasis are asymptomatic. When symptoms present, these females present with complaints of musty vaginal odor and have vulvovaginal itching, burning, or soreness. Dyspareunia and dysuria, though rare, but may be present. These patients also complain of postcoital bleeding and lower abdominal pain. On examination, there will be presence of abnormal vaginal discharge, which is thin, purulent, frothy, may or may not be bloody. In cases of trichomoniasis, cervicitis is seen, which is characterized by purulent discharge in the endocervical canal and endocervical bleeding. One finding, which is known as strawberry cervix, is seen in cases of trichomoniasis, which is due to the inflammation of cervix, which leads to its typical appearance. A strawberry cervix is appreciated as erythematous, punctate, and papilliform lesions over the endocervical canal or over at the mouth of the cervix. Strawberry cervix is also known as colpitis macularis. In cases of trichomoniasis in males, as told before, almost all the cases are asymptomatic, but when symptom is present, it presents as urethral discharge. Based on its symptoms, the trichomoniasis in males is divided into three groups. The first one being asymptomatic carrier state, which is present in majority of the cases, mild symptomatic disease, and acute trichomoniasis. On examination, there will be no clinical findings, but if at all a finding is present, it may present as abnormal penile discharge, which is scanty and thin. The associated findings may include balanitis or balanoposthitis, although physical findings of epididymitis and prostatitis may also occur. Complications in cases of females with trichomoniasis includes vaginitis, adnexal infections, PIDs, that is pelvic inflammatory disease, tubo-ovarian abscesses, increased risk of HIV transmission, and complications in cases of pregnant females. It includes increased risk of low birth weight, preterm delivery, and intrauterine infections. In cases of males, these complications may present in the form of prostatitis, epididymitis, urethral structural disease, and infertility. Coming on to the management, when we are dealing with trichomoniasis, investigations include wet mount, OSOM trichomonas rapid test, NAT, and culture. CDC recommends metronidazole or tinidazole in a start dose of 2 grams orally, and also WHO recommends the same treatment for trichomoniasis. Partner treatment in cases of trichomoniasis is must, and it should be given. Next is a case scenario in which a female presents with vaginal pruritus and soreness. On examination, there is thick white curdy discharge which is adherent to the vaginal walls. When such case scenario presents, we are probably dealing with a case of vulvovaginal candidiasis. As the name suggests, it is caused by Candida, and majority of these cases are caused by Candida albicans. Approximately 1/5 of these patients are asymptomatic, and the symptomatic patients presents with complaints of vulval itching, soreness, and a non-offensive curdy white adherent vaginal discharge. The pH in such cases are normal. On examination, apart from the curdy white discharge, there will also be vulval erythema, excoriations, and vulval edema. Vulvovaginal candidiasis is usually not acquired through sexual intercourse, hence partner treatment is not recommended. But there are certain case scenarios in which partner treatment is advised, one of them being a recurrent infection in females, or if the male partner of the female having vulvovaginal candidiasis has complaints of balanitis or balanoposthitis. Candidiasis in males presents as balanitis or balanoposthitis. A male patient may also have penile discharge, foul odor, phimosis, or itching. Candidiasis, either in male or females, it is a clinical diagnosis, but if at all we are to investigate, investigations can be done in the form of wet mount, that is with 10% potassium hydroxide, gram stain, or culture test. Treatment according to CDC includes topical treatment with clotrimazole 1% cream or 2% cream, which is to be instituted intravaginally for 7 to 14 days or 3 days respectively. We can also prescribe topical treatment with miconazole cream in varying concentration, that is 2% and 4%, which is to be instituted intravaginally only for 7 and 3 days respectively. According to WHO, miconazole or clotrimazole pessaries can also be given to the patient to be kept intravaginally in different doses, or an oral treatment with fluconazole 100 and 150 milligram start dose can also be given to these patients. This is a next case scenario in which a male patient presents with urethral discharge, dysuria, and occasional orcalgia. His wife has complaints of dysuria, and on examination, there is this whitish colored cervical discharge. When such cases present to us, we are probably dealing with urethritis or cervicitis. Urethritis, depending upon the causative organism, can either be gonococcal, non-gonococcal, or non-gonococcal, non-chlamydial. As the name suggests, gonococcal urethritis is caused by Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Non-gonococcal urethritis in majority of the cases is caused by Chlamydia trachomatis, And non-gonococcal, non-chlamydial urethritis is caused by different microorganisms that includes Mycoplasma genitalium, Ureaplasma, Trichomonas, or herpes simplex virus. Coming on to the gonococcal urethritis, it is caused by a gram-negative, non-motile, non-spore-forming diplococci, which is essentially present intracellularly in a neutrophil. In cases of gonococcal urethritis, about 50% of the infected females are asymptomatic, and the primary site of involvement of gonococcal infection in a female is endocervical canal, whereas it is urethral meatus or anterior urethra in cases of males. The symptoms include discharge, which is scanty and mucopurulent. Vaginal pruritus or dysuria may or may not be present. In cases of males, majority of these patients are symptomatic and complains of anterior urethritis. Discharge, which is present in the cases of males, is profuse, purulent, and yellowish green in color. Complications in female includes PLD, tubo-ovarian abscesses, ectopic pregnancies, infertility, and in male, the complications includes posterior urethritis, epididymitis, untreated periurethral abscesses, which leads to water can perineum. Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome is a syndrome that essentially includes inflammation of a liver capsule, which is associated with genitourinary tract infection. It is seen in both males as well as in females. Other complications of gonococcal urethritis includes disseminated gonococcal infection, which is also known as acute arthritis dermatitis syndrome. It clinically presents with acute arthritis, tenosynovitis, dermatitis, or combination of all of these findings. Complications of gonococcal urethritis may also include gonococcal arthritis, meningitis, and endocarditis. To diagnose a case of gonococcal infection, microscopy can be done, in which a gram staining is done and gram-negative diplococci are seen intracellularly in a neutrophil. Culture media for Neisseria gonococci is Thayer-Martin medium, Charcot-Maire medium, etc. Other lab diagnostic modalities includes PCR, DNA hybridization, ELISA, radioimmunoassay, etc. Treatment. Before 2020, CDC used to recommend a dual therapy for non-complicated gonococcal infection. But in 2020, prevalent prevalent resistance, now it has increased the dose of ceftriaxone from 250 milligram IM to 500 milligram IM stat. At present, CDC does not recommend dual therapy for uncomplicated gonococcal infection. According to WHO, different treatment in stat dose can be given for a non-complicated gonococcal infection, which includes ciprofloxacin at a dose of 500 mg orally stat, ceftriaxone 125 mg IM stat, or azithromycin 2 gram orally stat. Coming on to the non-gonococcal urethritis. Non-gonococcal urethritis is mainly caused by Chlamydia trachomatis, which is a gram-negative obligate intracellular microorganism. Based on the monoclonal antibody assay, it has 18 serovars. Serovar A to C causes trachoma, D to K causes genital tract infection, and serovar L causes lymphatic infections. There are two functional and morphological forms of Chlamydia trachomatis. The one is the elementary body and the other one is the reticulate body. Elementary bodies are present extracellularly, and these are infectious but metabolically inert, whereas reticular bodies are present intracellularly, metabolically active, but these bodies are non-infectious. A clinical infection of non-gonococcal urethritis presents with an incubation period of 1 to 3 weeks after exposure. Patient presents with low-grade urethritis with scanty or moderate mucoid or mucopurulent urethral discharge, though subclinical urethritis are also common. Patient may or may not have dysuria associated with urethritis. In cases of male, the main site of infections are urethra, epididymis or systemic infections. In cases of urethritis, dysuria with mild to moderate whitish or clear urethral discharge is present, and this urethritis may or may not be symptomatic. In cases of female urethritis, patient presents with dysuria frequency and or pyuria. Cervicitis is the main presenting feature in cases of non-gonococcal infection in females, and it presents with mucopurulent cervical discharge. Cervical erythema and edema on speculum examination is evident in cases of in cases of non-gonococcal infections. In males, on examination, there will be focal urethral tenderness, and meatal or penile lesions may mimic herpetic urethritis. In cases on speculum examination, there might be spontaneous cervical bleeding. Clinical syndrome associated with non-gonococcal urethritis includes post-gonococcal urethritis and Riter's disease. Coming on to the lab diagnosis, depending on to the presentation, there are certain clinical criteria, presumptive criteria, and diagnostic criteria. In cases of non-gonococcal urethritis in males, there will be presence of dysuria, urethral discharge, and on gram staining, if more than 2 neutrophils per high power field is present, in pyuria on first void urine, then the diagnosis is a diagnosis of non-gonococcal urethritis is made, and it is confirmed on culture. In cases of mucopurulent cervicitis, if cervical gram staining contains more than 30 neutrophils per high power field in a non-menstruating female, this is considered to be a case of non-gonococcal infection in non-gonococcal cervicitis, and the diagnosis is confirmed on culture. Other investigative modalities include ELISA, PCR, and serological test. CDC recommends doxycycline at a dose of 100 milligram orally for twice daily for 7 days, or tablet azithromycin, a single stat dose of 1 gram. WHO also recommends the same treatment as advised by CDC. Riter's syndrome, which is a complication, it is a seronegative HLA-B27 linked arthritis, which is often precipitated by genitourinary or gastrointestinal infections. The organisms associated with Riter's syndrome include Neisseria gonorrhoeae, Chlamydia trachomatis, Ureaplasma, Salmonella, Shigella, etc. It presents with a clinical triad of urethritis, conjunctivitis, and arthritis. To make a diagnosis of Riter's syndrome, a clinical triad is not essential, because in majority of these cases, a clinical triad of all these complaints is not present. The characteristic mucocutaneous lesions seen in a case of Riter's syndrome includes psoriasiform lesions, circinate balanitis, and keratoderma blanorhegicum. Treatment of this disorder includes antibiotics, NSAIDs, sulfasalazine, and other immunosuppressants. Now, to summarize today's class, if a patient comes with a vaginal discharge of different presentation, we come to a diagnosis. If a discharge is thin, watery, and fulfills AMSA's criteria, we can go for a gram stain to look for clues, and a probable diagnosis of bacterial vaginosis is made. If a patient of vaginal discharge comes with a discharge which is offensive, yellow-green, frothy in nature, and or patient also complains of vulval itching, We can make a probable diagnosis of trichomoniasis, and in cases of curdy white discharge which is adherent to the walls of the vagina, we can come up to a diagnosis of candidiasis. Partner treatment is mandatory in cases of trichomoniasis only, in cases of vaginal discharge. In case of urethral or cervical discharge, if the discharge is copious and purulent, then we can make a diagnosis of gonorrhea. And if the diagnosis is scanty but purulent, a diagnosis of non-gonococcal urethritis or cervicitis can be made. Treatment has already been discussed, and partner treatment is mandatory in both these cases. Coming on to the NACO guidelines, NACO basically advises a treatment for PHC setting in where the point of care tests are not available. It gives STD treatment in kits which are of different color. In cases of vaginal discharge, there is this kit 2 which is green in color and consists of secnidazole and fluconazole at a dose of 2 gram and 150 milligram respectively. A single dose is present in this kit. There is a kit 1 which is gray in color and it is for the patient that complains of urethral or cervical discharge. It consists of azithromycin 1 gram and tablet cefixime 400 milligram 1 tablet. Both these tablets are to be given in a start dose. Thank you. Any questions, anyone?